So
Okay.
hey, so here we are. Uh, I am Zac Maloy. I founded an event. This is year 5. I almost said would be year 5 of the Oklahoma Songwriters Festival, where we would bring Nashville writers to Oklahoma. We would do songwriting sessions, literal sessions. We would have an evening fancy pants dinner, reception, morning panels, workshops, and then a big show Saturday evening. We're going to do the show, the big evening show. Marcus Hummin and I will be on stage at the Grand Casino in Oklahoma, and we will then cut to performances by Desmond Child, Brett James, Jim Beavers, Jarrett Reddick from Bowling for Soup, local artists, Abby Philbrick and Graham Colton, and myself. My wife keeps telling me that one of these years I got to phase myself out of this thing and just be the MC. But for now, I'm still part of it. The reason we're all here on these screens is that typically there would be an in-person panel discussion. Last year we did it at Castle Row Studios, but that ain't happening. So I thought we would bring in 2 songwriters that aren't going to be involved in the performance, but that's bonus songwriters as far as I'm concerned. And so we're going to have a songwriter discussion with my friend Blair Daly and Lee Thomas Miller, both here in Nashville, and we are going to hand it over to our moderator, the illustrious journalist extraordinaire, Nathan Poppe.
Hey, thank you very much. Hey guys, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks,
It's super cool that you guys would think to involve somebody that has no songwriting ability. So very generous. So thanks for having me be here. Zac, it's hard to believe 5 years ago we sat down for an interview at Elemental Coffee in Oklahoma City, and we were kind of talking about what was the Oklahoma Songwriters Festival going to look like. And I'm happy to hear it's back, and you're bringing the talent to Oklahoma, where there is no shortage of fantastic songwriters. And so we're happy to have people involved and learn what we got going and just spread the dirt, you know. So I've been looking forward to doing this all week. I even brushed my teeth for this for some reason.
So did I. I did too.
Perfect. We're all on the same page.
I did not.
I had a feeling.
Well, you are in a barn right now, Lee, so you're excused.
I wanted to give the authentic country music experience to the viewers.
I can smell the authenticity from Oklahoma City. Well, Zac, first off, you know, we're on the 5th year of this festival, and I'm just kind of would be interested to hear from you. What made you want to do the festival again this year and continue doing this special event?
Well, I mean, you know, the short answer is this is one of my favorite things I do. As Blair knows, Blair and I are involved in a publishing company together, and which is another exciting new venture called the Four Horsemen, and that's my main gig. But if I'm being honest, doing this festival has been one of my favorite things every year, to be able to bring in, I mean, the writers we've brought in for the festival over the years are, you know, Marty Fredrickson, Brett James, you know, my buddy Jarrett from Bowling for Soup I mentioned, and to be able to bring them into Oklahoma City and have them interact with local musicians and Oklahoma songwriters has been really cool to watch, and see even some of the relationships that have sort of been born out of that. You know, I've got different dudes that came from Nashville, and they'll say, "Wait, who was that guy that, you know, that introduced himself at the dinner on Friday night?" So just to bring a little bit of Nashville to Oklahoma was sort of, if you'll remember from year 1, that was the concept. My sister, I should say, by the way, shout out to Grand Casino and Resort, who is our marquee sponsor, but also my sis Tava is the director for the Oklahoma Office of Film and Music, and they've been a proud sponsor of this event. This was born from a conversation. Zac, you moved away from Oklahoma. What could you bring back? You know, what could you do? And so it was just, let's have this event. And yeah, you said it, Nathan. We talked about what will this look like in 5 years. I sure as hell didn't think it would look like this. But you know, it is what it is. And the short answer is just, I love doing it. I love I love, my heritage. I was at an event the first year I was back here at a #1 party, and Tim Dubois, who used to run ASCAP, who's from Oklahoma, said, "Raise your hand if you're from Oklahoma," and half the room raised their hand. So there's a pretty great songwriting community here, and who have embraced Oklahoma talent over the years.
Yeah, obviously we have two talented individuals here today who have been involved around Music City since the early 90s. Lee Thomas Miller, multi-instrumentalist, songwriter, who's worked magic for Garth Brooks and Jamie Johnson and Tim McGraw. And Blair Daly is here as well, written songs known around the world for everyone from Uncle Kracker, Kelly Clarkson, Leonard Skinner, even the Backstreet Boys. We'll start with Lee and Blair, same question though. What made you want to be a part of this festival and share a little bit today?
Well, I'm a Zac Maloy fan to start with. And,
yeah.
No, Nashville is kind of a city of immigrants, and we've all kind of came from all these different places, and we all have these different things that we're involved in, and be it at home or on the road. And, we just kind of go to each other and ask each other to come be a part of the things that we're involved in. And, I've been trying to make it out to do it in person in Oklahoma ever since Zac started. And so this is a great opportunity to plug in what little bit I can, and I'm just always thrilled to talk about Nashville and songwriting, and I love Oklahoma too. So
awesome. And Blair, same question. What made you want to be involved with the festival this year?
Well, two of my favorite songwriters are actually from Oklahoma. One being Garth Brooks and the other being Zac Maloy. And like Lee said, and I figured there's got to be more over there. So let's do something and get them out of their hiding places and see if they'll come out and do some songwriting with other Nashville people and Oklahoma people for that sake. And no, I think Lee said it best. I mean, gosh, any way we can get things going between our home states. I'm from South Louisiana, and I go back and forth from time to time. I don't perform live, which is why I said yes to the panel. Zac has asked me 5 years now, I think maybe 4, because he gave up on me last year because if I would play, but I said no. But then when he called me this year and said, "So my Oklahoma Songwriter Festival," I was like, did he forget? But no, he asked me to do the panel, and I was like, yeah, that's something I'd be down for. I love doing anything that kind of reconnects us to where we came from as songwriters, and Zac being one of my best buddies and also my main collaborator and partner in songwriting, of course. Anything to help out.
Yeah,
awesome.
And by the way, Lee, I told you to not talk about immigration in this Zoom.
Oh.
Leave immigration out of the conversation.
I like to get right to the hot button topic.
Yeah, someone promised
we're about 10 minutes
in,
and we're 10 minutes in, and no one's offended yet. So just let me know when it's time.
Well, I can already feel the love in the chat room growing. I'm going to focus a few of my questions today just on what you guys do every day, and dissect a little bit about songwriting, what the craft means to you, and how you do what you do. And hopefully somebody who's watching this that's maybe an aspiring songwriter from Oklahoma, Nashville, or anyway can walk away with something practical, something interesting, and just to learn a little bit more about what you guys do. And I'll start off with Zac. Obviously this year hasn't gone to plan for anyone. I'm sure COVID has had an impact on you in many different ways, but I'm interested to hear on how it's impacted your creative output or your songwriting process, or if things stayed largely the same and you just kind of do your thing without anybody around. I'd just kind of be curious to hear how that's impacted you, Zac.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, as I mentioned, Blair, I can't believe that I'm saying this, but we started a company with Marty Fredrickson, Scott Stevens, myself, and Blair called the Four Horsemen. We partnered with Round Hill Publishing, and signed a deal in the middle of all this, which is insane, and I'm very proud of that. As far as the day-to-day stuff, I mean, this is going to sound kind of weird, but you know, I'm sure I will do in-person songwriting again, but it hasn't slowed down really for me. I mean, luckily, technology is such that I get on these Zooms, and by the way, they kind of suck. I mean, it's not the same as being in the room with someone. It's just not.
Right.
But the truth is that we all do what we got to do, kind of, and so I've been working steadily, and you know, I don't know, but I know about Blair because Blair has a newborn. Still, I guess I can call her Alice, a newborn child.
Yeah.
So they're playing it safe, and he hasn't left. I don't think he's left that room he's in, actually. So.
I sleep in here. I eat in here. Right.
But yeah, I mean, Blair, you and Lee can speak to that. I mean, I'm not sure, Lee, exactly what you've been up to.
So we hit end of March and zombie apocalypse started, and I'd never heard of Zoom like most of us, and the publisher said, let's set up some of this, and I thought, well, this seems ridiculous, but it's only going to be for a couple of weeks, so sure. And away we went, and I was very skeptical, and then a couple of weeks passed, and I discovered that we were getting stuff done, and kind of everybody was giving in and saying yes, and just doing it this way. And then a couple of months in, I discovered that it was very efficient. I really liked just, you just walk downstairs and turn it on, and somehow I'm still late to work, which I have no excuse. But then when you're done, you're home, but the biggest thing that I've noticed, and I don't know, maybe you guys weigh in on it, is I don't think they realize it, but those co-writers that tend to, get distracted and pace around outside and smoke and don't focus, they're kind of in something about just sitting there.
Yep.
The most scattered, even the artists that are just so scattered, somehow they kind of dial it in and work until you're finished. It's so much more efficient with so many people. So I'm kind of a fan. There's a lot of good things have happened. Knock on wood, I think some things are getting ready to come out to the radio that we actually wrote during quarantine and was cut during quarantine and is being radio promoted during quarantine. And
wow.
Yeah, so I'm kind of a fan.
I'm with those guys. I think too, I agree with what both Lee and Zach are saying about it. It's focused. It's way more intentional when these Zooms get set up. You start and you're right in, not a whole lot of messing around and distraction. So I find like we're getting maybe the same amount of work done in a way shorter window, and are able to spend more time with our families or friends or doing other things. And I think that the biggest plus to me is the fact that, like, I'd say 75% of the artists that we're working with right now aren't in Nashville. So if this were a year ago, we would be spending money on hotels and flights and plane, all that type of stuff and traveling. Whereas now it doesn't matter. We'll be on, Zach can be Nashville. We'll be with one guy's in the UK and one guy's in LA. And as long as we can make the time zones line up, we can get on Zoom and write with people around the world, which is, I don't know why it took a global pandemic to get us to realize that could be done without having to travel across the country or on the other side of the world. So that, I think, is a big perk to me, because we're able to do business with all these artists that aren't necessarily even here. And I'd say that's the biggest plus, and the biggest maybe negative with Zoom writing to me during pandemic is just the fact that, number one, you aren't in the room with your buddies, which you miss. You miss that, just the feeling of being able to high five when somebody nails a line or a vocal or whatever it is. And the second thing is just not being able to cut vocals. You know, that's a tough thing when we're done with the song. You know, and the artist is, say, in LA. Normally, if we were here in the room, we would immediately have been cutting vocals right away. So then it becomes a task of finding a way for them to record these vocals and you to be involved, if you know, in some capacity. That's a tough one. It's a little frustrating. We're still figuring that out. A lot of artists are buying their first SM7 for the first time, microphone for the first time ever, and you know, Googling how to run Pro Tools. But we're all learning. But you know, I'm down, man. I think the Zoom thing is here to stay. I mean, like Zach said, we may eventually go back to doing some writing in person, but I think the traveling to write thing may have really that may have gotten taken off the table for now.
As long as Google is there for us to ask questions, I think we will survive through this. That's always good to hear. Well, I'd be interested in traveling back a little bit to the pre-pandemic days, if you will. Something really cool about this festival is that I've gotten to document a little of the songwriting sessions. I got to watch JD McPherson do some writing, Marcus as well, the first year. That was the first time that I've really ever gotten to sit down in a room and see people co-write on a song. So we'll start with Zach again. When you are sitting down to work on a collaboration with, maybe it's someone new or a group you've never worked with, what helps break the ice and brings out the best from all the other writers in a room?
Inappropriate jokes. No. So yeah, man. I mean, so you Nathan, what Lee and Blair, what you don't know is Nathan was, he was great in the, well, all years, but in year one, it was sort of key to get the word out about what my songwriter festival was all about. And Nathan, I don't know if you remember this, but what happens is I paired up my Nashville songwriters with songwriters from Oklahoma City. And the first pairing was Marcus Hummin and Steven from the Flaming Lips. And to watch the door close on those two dudes with knees together writing a song just kind of warmed my heart in a way that you can't even understand, because I'm a huge Lips fan. They were the big band in Norman when my band was coming up, and Marcus is obviously a great friend. So, you know, it's funny that you asked the question, because I imagine what the hell happened in that songwriting session for the first 10 minutes. I mean, that must have been insanity. So what it's all about really is just, and luckily for, you know, Blair and I mean, we do country music. You know, we've both had tons of success there, but we also do a ton of rock. And so the cool thing for us is that typically you get on with, you know, fill in the blank. We wrote with Black Veil Brides, and you know, the first part of the conversation was, oh, did you hear the new song by so-and-so that just came out? You just start talking, right? You just start kind of, you know, talking about things that you have in common, and you know, things you kind of want to bitch about or whatever. And then you just kind of dive in. That it's an ongoing question from, you know, family when I'm, you know, have been back for the holidays. When offhandedly I say, you know, yeah, I wrote 5 songs last week in 5 days, and they're like, I don't understand how you do it. And the truth is, neither do I. You just do it. You just go in the room. You know, I'm constantly singing into my phone a voice memo while I'm on a run or driving down the street and typing in a title. And so, yeah, I mean, that's my answer, that you just, I don't know, you just dive in.
Yeah, Lee, do you have anything to add to that and share a little bit about your experience?
About writing in general?
Yeah, when you're sitting down in a room with maybe somebody you've never written a song with, how do you break the ice and get that momentum going?
Well, you know, I agree with Zach. People are kind of fascinated, you know, by the volume of songs that we write. Of course, the business is a numbers game. You know, you have to write a lot of songs to have a little bit of success. I always remind people that it's it's the difference in doing it for fun and doing it, doing it as a hobby and doing it as a job. We don't, it's our job, so what else are we going to do during the day? So yeah, we're going to write 5-6 days a week, but we're not working that in amongst some other real job, as far as the breaking ice, I think that goes with the fact that we do it every day. We do a lot of blind dates, as always have. Our publishers will set us up with somebody, especially artists, and I don't know, at least maybe once or twice a week, I've probably got some 20-year-old artist from Sony Records that I've never met before, or some hot new track guy that so and so just signed at a company, and yeah. So certainly, non-quarantine, when you're in the room, it's easier to look at each other and break the ice and drink coffee and talk about where you're from, and that's always fascinating to talk about where each other grew up and what our experiences are. But we're there to write, so you typically kind of keep that short, and you kind of learn about each other as you're writing, and you discover a whole lot about somebody when you're sitting there making stuff up. As far as inappropriate jokes go, I've always said that I don't care how beautiful the song is that was sang at your wedding. If it was written by a couple of guys, there were nasty versions of it all day long because words rhyme, right? And we will sing it with just all of the heart of the real line, and then we'll just laugh like 12-year-olds.
Yeah,
I can't wait to hear those B-sides someday.
I always say about Nashville, the greatest thing about it is the people and the business. And, I love writers' rounds. I love bringing guys like this to a show and saying, hey, let me introduce you to some of my fun friends. And then, they sing some big hit that they wrote, and you watch the people going, oh my word, I love that song. And then they have a personal story about that song and what it meant to them, So Nashville is still kind of a small town at heart, especially Music Row. When you really get down to it, there aren't that many of us. We all kind of know each other. We all kind of go through life together. We know the ups and downs, and celebrates, and when people have babies and when people lose somebody, that part of it is as beautiful as any of it. I think that's what separates Nashville from maybe other places, is it still has that community. So I have no idea if that answered your question.
Yeah, close enough,
man.
Lee.
That was good, Lee. Man, I think gosh, those guys, definitely nailed the question. I think the only thing I may add to that is kind of we call it doing our homework, just doing a little research about the artist, listening to some music. Hopefully we get it sooner than an hour before the write starts, which sometimes that's when we find out about the person we're getting ready to, drop the guard and write a song with. But if we do get a chance before, do some digging, read some bios, watch some videos, that kind of stuff. And that kind of, Lee said blind dates. It's like if you've only been on one blind date, it's really awkward. You're not sure really how to act or what to say. But when you go on blind dates a few times a week, you get good at it, and you start to learn what the questions are, and how to. You almost become a little bit like it's almost a little bit like acting, and your main goal, at least for me, is to make the artist feel comfortable as soon as you can, and get them to kind of drop any kind of any guard or give them a room of a feeling they can trust you, so that you can get to the good stuff quicker rather than it taking several hours or even another day. But that's it. Just finding some common ground and getting on that same level playing field and just make them feel comfortable. And I think that's the foundation for I like to start a session on.
Yeah. It sounds like the best advice there is just maybe be a good hang. Be able to
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Okay, thank you guys. I think I've got another question here. I'd be curious to hear from everybody, and we can start with Zac again. What's a song that you wish you had written and why?
Well, just right away, a song called "In Color" that was recorded by Jimmy Johnson. Now, Lee, I probably told you this story, and this is not blowing smoke. Blair has a bunch on his resume that I wish I would have written too, but "In Color," I remember hearing that song and just immediately Googling who wrote it and being real pissed off at the people that wrote it. But that was a song that for a while, and this is before I even had a country cut, to be honest with you, I wrote in Oslo with some Norwegian dudes, and like 15 minutes in, I was like, "Can I play you guys a song? Just this song called 'In Color'." And that, like, one of this sort of Viking Icelandic origined Oslo dude songwriter was tearing up, like he was tearing up, like. So yeah, I love that song, Lee. That's quite an achievement, that song. If you haven't heard it, go listen to it, and you'll immediately know what I'm talking about.
Huh. Well, I'm huge in Norway. I mean,
the Vikings love this guy.
The Vikings. Well, I'm honored. Thank you for that. Off the top of my head, I would say "Live Like You're Dying," a Tim McGraw song. It's one of those things that I think does everything a country song should do. Every line of it, I don't know. If the minute you ask the question, that's the one that comes to mind for all of the reasons: craft and commercial success, and the record was great, and the guys that wrote it are dear friends of mine, and so that's probably where my coveting would lie.
That one just is able to take something so big like the idea of death, and it just captures all of those emotions and bottles it in a pretty fantastic way. Yeah, that one. It's hard for me to remember all the words to every song, but anytime that one kicks in, I'm already looking forward to the bull named Fu Manchu part. So that's a really good choice.
Yep.
Blair, how about you?
Those are good ones. Really good ones. Man, that might be the toughest question asked to a songwriter.
There's a lot of songs out there. I tried to count.
A lot of songs, and it's like it depends on the day and my mood and what I was doing before that, but where I may normally pick something like "Welcome to the Jungle" or "You Shook Me All Night Long." If we are talking our Nashville peeps, our people, and the craft coming out of Nashville, one of my favorite songs over the last decade is "Humble and Kind," another McGraw song, and it says a lot about McGraw. I mean, I think he's one of the best A&R guys in Nashville that's ever been here. But he that song nailed me. Lori McKenna wrote that song, and it nailed me the first time I heard it. Heard her do it, and then hearing McGraw's record was incredible. And then after I had my first child, which was 9 months ago, we had a baby. It's a whole new level of love and respect for that song, because it's like a prayer to your children. And man, it's that one gets me every time. That's definitely a gift from God. So.
Great one. I'll also dovetail and just say, Nathan, my secondary answer is, if you're asking based on the royalty check, it's a tie between Old Town Road and Despacito. So.
Yeah, I was hoping you would show up on one of those Old Town Road remixes with maybe get the whole Nixon crew in there, but there's still time.
Working them hard.
There's a long line, I'm sure.
The real honest answer is, hang on a second, what's number one right now? That's what I wish I wrote.
That's right.
Yeah, man, exactly.
This next question is similar in a way, but in that it's personal and concerning songwriting. But I would be curious to hear from you. What's a song that you have written during your career that you really use as a mark for progress, where you can look at that song and say, this was something that really changed for me, or this is something that I don't want to do anymore. I'd be curious just for you to like focus on a song that you've written in the past and just kind of how that has marked your progress in the craft of songwriting. You can start with Zac again.
Well, I mean, the first one that came to mind is I had a song with Carrie Underwood called "Temporary Home," which was not just my first #1 country song, but my first cut in country music. And so that opened a lot of doors. But I'm going to say that another song edges it out, and Blair knows where I'm going here. But I had a recent hit song with Shinedown with a song called "Atlas Falls." And the reason I would say this one, and it's weird that it's such a recent, recent release, but the reason I would choose it is, and Blair knows the story, I wrote it about 7 years ago, and it did not make the album. We've heard that, unfortunately. That's the title to my autobiography that's going to come out later this year. Didn't make the album, sorry. But it didn't make the album. Gosh, what was it, Blair? 2-3 albums ago. And wrote it with David Hodges and Brent Smith, the singer for Shinedown. And at the beginning of COVID, Brent decided to release the song as a free release if you bought a t-shirt for $50 that said Atlas Falls on it, and it had the lyrics on the back. And $50 would go towards Direct Relief, which provides frontline medical workers with supplies and support. And the song, the t-shirts have raised, I don't know, $600,000, $700,000 for that organization. And the song that wasn't even released to radio went to #1 at Active Rock. And so to me, that song is, I'm not going to say it's my proudest achievement because, it's one of them for sure. But the fact that it happened the way it happened, that a song was just good enough that all these years later, it made its way to the top of a chart of any kind. That sort of is the song I would pick to answer your question. Also because it sort of embodies my career. We've talked about this before, Blair, but I just sort of kept my head down and kept at work, and lucky for me, that happened. That I was able to have a song just come out in the middle of this awful year, and help a few people, touch a few people, and make its way that far up a chart.
Blair, we'll take it to you now. What's a song that you use as a real mark of progress, or just a big point in your songwriting career that you can focus on?
I think for me, it would be my first cut, because we all work, whether it happens at 18 years old or at 57 years old. You work your whole life and dream about it your whole life, and it just seems so far out of reach. And then when that does happen and you get recognition and acceptance and validated, I think that changes, it changes something in you, and it also changes the way you're perceived in the music business and amongst your peers. And so that, for me, it was a song that was recorded by a friend of Lee and I's, from the same town, John Michael Montgomery. And John Michael was the first artist to take a chance on an unknown, young, early 20s songwriter from South Louisiana. I won't get into the way the crazy maze it went through to get to him, but he, there was nothing really political about it back then. He just heard the demo, loved the song, it was called How Was I to Know? And it was a big old country rangy ballad. And back then in the 90s, he was one of the kings of the big rangy love songs in those days, and had a string of hits with those. And yeah, it was my first cut, and it ended up being my first #1. And it was, you know, the blessing of having that, and then the curse of how the hell do you follow that? You know, when your first cut, you know, accidentally goes #1, what do you do next? You know, it's like, but yeah, John Michael Montgomery, How Was I to Know, would be the song that kind of shifted everything for me, and kind of got one foot in the door. And then, you know, from then it's been all on me to keep one foot in and keep it cracked open all these years.
Whew, no pressure there, Blair. No pressure.
None at all. Nothing. No pressure for a 25-year-old guy from a small town in Louisiana. Yeah, it was crazy though. No, but he's been good to me. He's been a very big champion of me for a long time, as well as a good buddy with Lee. So it's kind of cool that we share that friendship with him.
Small world at the end of the day, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Lee, can you share about a landmark song that really sticks out to you in your songwriting career?
Well, I mean, if you're fortunate to have hits, every hit changes your life in some way, because they're so hard to get. And but I agree with Blair. I think it's that one that validates you, you know, to everyone, including yourself. You know, it takes a long time to know if you're going to be able to be good enough or lucky enough, or a combination of both. And a lot of people quit before the miracle, you know. So I think the one that, you know, my first hit, it wasn't my first cut, but it was my first #1 record, was a song called The Impossible by Joe Nichols. And it was 11 years after I moved to Nashville. That little overnight success.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it was my first #1. It was my first Grammy nomination. It's my first BMI award. It really, it was an amazing confidence booster. But you know, look, it's the entertainment business. You know, it's you know, you need calling cards. People need to have a reason to have you on the radar. It opened all the doors and changed everything. And then I would say in color, as Zach had mentioned, it did not go #1. People don't realize that, but it didn't. But it was my second Grammy loss, but it won all of the other awards, CMA and ACM Song of the Year. But more importantly, it also was kind of an artistic feather in the cap, because I felt like that it was critically acclaimed, and you know, there's a lot of people that may not love commercial country music that kind of felt like that it was it had some meat on it. And certainly it's probably what, you know, I'm known for more so than anything else. You know? But again, every time somebody calls and says they cut one, you know, it's important. You know, they're all a milestone, just if nothing else, so you can remind yourself that you do know how to do this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. And this kind of piggybacks on that last question. You guys were kind of touching on this a little bit before. You all have had, obviously there's a lot of skill in what you do, and you've had a lot of luck there too to propel some of these songs to get seen around the world. I think most artists all want the same thing, is to have their work be seen or heard. And when an artist takes one of your songs that you've co-written, and it does become big, does it still feel like your work, or does it, once it blows up, does it belong to the world or that particular artist? What happens to that song once it cracks?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about it. I don't think I've really thought about it much. I think my gut answer is that no, it's always partially mine. I mean, because if I hear, I can remember hearing a song on the radio that I wrote for the first time for another artist, band called Bowling for Soup, and being like, I remember that bridge. I remember writing that, while we were walking to the coffee shop, in Burbank. And, so yeah, I mean, the artists definitely go and make them their own. Producers definitely take your idea and sort of shape it in the image of this next, album, or this artist's image or whatever. But I don't know. I'd be curious to know, actually, Lee and Blair, what you think. But I always feel like it's still mine, or that little part of it that was and is.
Or Lee, do you want to go, my man?
No, go ahead.
I think that is an interesting question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. Nathan, I think the best way for me to explain that is, like, I feel like it wasn't ours really to begin with. It's kind of a gift that we were given and dropped into our laps and that day, and it was meant to be. It was in the room, and we grabbed on and held on to it, and then we put it out there. We're the vehicle for that, and then the artist is a different vehicle that gets it out to the people to share it. So I think really it's a little bit of everybody's, and we were the ones lucky enough to be in the room that day when it was dropped in our laps. Definitely feel a connection to it and ownership, but yeah, it's kind of like once we're done with what we need to do to it, passing it on to the public is even the greater gift of it for more people to hear it. It's a lot more fun than if it's a song me, Lee, and Zach write, and we're the only, our wives are the only ones that hear it, which is the case with most of the songs I write. But in this, in the case of a record that gets out there and gets released, yeah, I think it's a little bit everybody's, and everybody kind of makes it their own, when they hear it. Yeah, man.
So leave it to Blair. Leave it to Blair to have this Zen universe speaking to the answer. And I'm just saying, no, it's still mine. It's still mine.
I just wanted to point out how greedy Zach
yeah, thanks.
that's what this is all about. How about you, Lee?
Oh, wow. Certainly if we write them with the artists, they're making it theirs as we go, and we're helping them write their art. I always make a joke that I've been married to my wife for 28 years, and people have this warm and fuzzy opinion of the guy that goes to work and writes love songs about his wife. And I always say, well, it's probably year 3 when I stopped coming home and saying, well, I wrote a love song about you today. And she just looked at me and said, no, you wrote a love song for Dirk Bentley's wife today.
Yeah. Exactly.
As far as the stuff that we write and gets pitched and somebody cuts it, yeah, I mean, that's the goal. We have to write universal themes that they can relate to. And then if they can relate to it, then the people can relate to it. That's the whole beauty of professional songwriting. I never have any thought of it being mine versus theirs. It's such a combination of both. And, what I love is I have one George Strait cut. And it was never a single. No one's ever heard it but me, and I've heard it many times. George Strait did not write it. I wrote it with a couple of buddies, and it's a song about my son's depression that even the guys I wrote it with didn't know. I mean, it is very much an autobiographical song about this dark period we went through with my kid. And it comes on, and George Strait sings you a story about my family, and that's magical to me, and then the only time George Strait ever had a listening party for an album was that album, and we got to go in and sit with him at the console and listen to our song. And I told him that story, and he got teary. It was this beautiful thing. So I feel like that's what it's all about. That's what, we bring our life and our experiences in, and we craft it, and then they record it and they go out there and they sing it to the world. Now, that being said, I could take about every cut I've ever had and go through and show you the mistakes where they change the melody for the better. I've had things and I'm like, oh God, that is so fantastic because they made it their own. Tim McGraw is so good about making a Tim McGraw record, and Tim McGraw's voice sounds like the radio. So he's been really good to me. I've had several things on him, and every one of them has been magical Tim McGraw. And every one of them has had places where my phrasing was better than his. But it doesn't matter. I've had big hits on stuff that has a moment that makes me cringe. Because I'm just like, I cannot believe they didn't fix that.
Right.
So for better or worse, sometimes you're still owning it. That's great.
Lee, what's the name of the George Strait song, Lee?
It's called When I Can't Feel It.
Okay, I got to check that out.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one either. I'm gonna have to find that.
We do a lot of advocacy in Washington D.C., and it's something I use a lot of times, advocating for the American songwriter. I'll tell this story about this terrible, dark time that we went through. And then I'll tell them about George Strait. And I'll say, here's a George Strait song about my kid. And I've told them the story ahead of time, and then I sing them the song. And it just guts them. Because it's like, a lot of times the stories you're hearing Luke Bryan and Kenny Chesney sing about, it wasn't their life.
Right.
It was us. It was Blair's life. It was Zac's life. It was Zac's mother. Or that's the neat thing about it.
It's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you guys have seen the Blaze Foley film that was made just a couple of years ago. Ethan Hawke directed it. Super good. They have a scene where Charlie Sexton is playing Townes Van Zandt. And he goes, they say you got to live a little to write a song, but you actually got to die a little to write a truly great song. It's a great moment in the movie, also worth checking out. Well, guys, that touched on pretty much all of the questions that I had. We did have 3 individual questions that were actually sent in by fans. And I think we can end on that note. And we can just jump right into those. And this first one is back to you, Lee. We've talked a little bit about In Color already. Obviously, Jamie Johnson song there. Is that particular track inspired by a family member of any of the writers on that, or is that just some sort of awesome storytelling?
Well, I guess a little of both. My grandfather was in Germany in World War II, 1943. And James Otto and Jamie Johnson's grandfathers were in Korea. So they're just a little bit younger than me. It was Jamie's idea based on a conversation we were having. Jamie's the one that I said something, and Jamie said, well, there's your idea. If you think that's something, you should have seen it in color. So we felt like we had an idea, and then we did the storytelling. We put all of the things together based on, what we remembered about our grandfathers, what our parents told us about our grandfathers and grandmothers, and of course, all of those albums of pictures, that are in boxes somewhere that we'll occasionally pull out and go through. And it's all about the idea.
That's right.
Awesome. Yep. This next question from a fan is for you, Blair. It seems like you have a really strong relationship with artists you've worked with. Is that tough to keep up given how much people are busy, they're on tour, and how much generally they have on their plates?
Yeah, I mean, I try to keep that relationship going with, there's a lot of them that you write with once and may never see again. And for no reason, no bad reason, you just don't click. And then there's some who come over and you click with, and it kind of, the song almost, the song is important, but it almost becomes secondary because you connect on a human level, friend level. And I think when that does happen, then you do start writing better. And the friendship grows out of that. And they are so all over the place all the time. I never know where they are, but I know that when they're home and have a second, that I usually get a text or a call. I try not to bother them when they're on the road or in the studio, the ones that I do become friends with, because, you know, they are inundated and being pulled at in a million different directions nonstop. So I think that, you know, the ones who I've become good friends with and have a, you know, have longevity in that, I almost wait for them to reach out to me, if that makes sense, because I know that that's when they have downtime. They reach out to me rather than me always. So I don't really have to do a lot of, I can't really take responsibility for a lot of it once they're out and about. It kind of falls on them. And, you know, and that's also when you know somebody's your friend, when they are getting a second in their crazy schedule and give you a shout and check in with you. But I think that's how it goes with artists who are touring. You know, no one's really touring right now, but in more normal times, that's how it goes. I just I wait for them and try to be available when they have those windows, because they don't have a lot of free windows. So that's I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a tricky thing. It's kind of the opposite of what you would think. It's like you just kind of wait for them, and hopefully you're there when they have a little time to reconnect.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. And Zac, we'll end on you. I'm sure people are aware that you were in a little band called the Nixons. What was the transition tough to go strictly writing for your own band to like trying to get in other people's heads and write for them?
No, it wasn't, and we've you know, the kind of a recurring theme here is just to, you know, try to be the best hang that you can be. I mentioned Bowling for Soup was my first cut, and then I got my first publishing deal. I basically got my first publishing deal because rock bands were starting to open their doors to write with outside songwriters. I was lucky also. My very first co-write I ever did was Marty Fredrickson, who I mentioned before. He was at year one of the Songwriters Festival, giving his Aussie impression, which was awesome. And so having a couple great first co-writes, I think probably helped me to say, oh, you know, because I think I was probably like bitching to the person sitting next to me on the plane as they flew me out to LA for my first co-write. I don't need them, you know, you know, the Nixons right. So to answer your question, it was pretty easy. Also, luckily for me, my first bands that I wrote with were friends. Bowling for Soup, I mentioned. And, but it, you know, it's, I would say that to answer your question, I would speak to going in reverse almost, because the Nixons have recently reunited. And so I will say that 18 years after writing a Nixon song, we dove back in last year and we released a new EP earlier this year. But writing for the Nixons was actually almost like a weird thing to wrap my head around, having been a songwriter that was trying to get in other people's heads. I almost had to like re-educate myself of like, wait, you can kind of say whatever the hell you want to say, Zac. You don't have to worry about, you know, well, this artist is clean and sober, so you can't write about alcohol, is sort of the go-to sort of thing that Nashville writers are always sort of walking this fine line. But so no, it was a pretty natural thing for me, I think, because of luck. Those first couple writers I hooked up with, and the first couple bands that I worked with were friends. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, that's everything that I wanted to throw at you. I want to thank you for the candid answers. I apparently have a George Strait song that I need to listen to real soon. And I just want to thank you for your time. Obviously, it's wild out there, and so for you to take an hour to kind of share with this festival means a lot. So thank you very much. And Zach, is there anything you want to do to carry us out?
Yeah, I mean, I just will say to my friends Lee and Blair, thank you very much. This went off better than I would have predicted. Luckily, no internet glitches and great answers and great discussion. Nathan, great questions and great work moderating this thing. We've never had a moderator, but I really did enjoy it. It stinks we couldn't all be in a room sitting on stools telling stories, but again, thanks to Grand Casino and Resort, Chad and everyone there. They basically are the reason this festival exists, along with my sis at the Oklahoma Office of Film and Music. And check out the evening show. And thanks to everyone for playing along.
Thanks for having me.
Stay safe. Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.